But once you come into God's love, you have to allow yourself to now mirror what you're receiving. But God extended his love, and he extended his mercy, and he extended his grace. Grace means you didn't do anything to deserve it, but God gave it to you anyway. Hey guys, welcome back to Christmas Bible study. Today we're in Luke chapter 14 and we're carrying on learning about some of the things Jesus taught about before his crucifixion. And it came to pass, as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And dropsy was a disease where you would get swelling in your face, and your facial features would have fluid accumulated in them, so you would just look quite bloated and puffy. And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And Jesus answering spake unto the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? Now note, this time he's asked them for permission, and I feel like he's almost testing them, because how can you see someone sick and deny them of their healing? And I think he's almost saying it like ironically, like, oh, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their peace. Not even they agreed that it was lawful, they just held it. They just let him do it. And he took him and healed him and let him go. And answering them, saying, Which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? They could not answer him again to these things. And I've written, God is a God of logic, right? He understands. The Sabbath day is a day of rest, yes, but if you have a sheep or a cattle or an animal and it falls and it needs rescuing, you're not going to leave your cattle. You're going to get it out, even though that's doing work. So I love that God is logical. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden, when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying unto them, When thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honourable man than thou be bidden of him. So basically at wedding culture, you would get invited and there was seats determined on your status and how high up you were. And he that bade thee, and him come and say to thee, Give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit down in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, Friend, go up into the higher. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And I said, our humility speaks a greater reward than our hubris. When you're more humble, and when you lessen yourself and allow other people to shine, then you yourself will then have the opportunity to shine. But when you always think me first, you'll get embarrassed, because when other people don't perceive you that way, you will then have your perception of yourself challenged. Then he also said to him that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbours, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made. So Jesus is saying, don't just call people who can give back to you. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but you should not only get into things for what they can do for you, sometimes you should just do things out of the goodness of doing a good thing. When thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. And I've written, God rewards when people don't. You might be a good person, you might be working hard, you might be doing everything you possibly know to do, and you might be thinking, I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm not getting anything. God will reward you in ways that you might not even know are worth having. And God's reward is always better than man's, because God's reward is eternal. And anything you get on earth will only last for a period of time. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then he said unto him, A certain man made a great supper, and bade many, and sent his servant at the supper to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. So I've written, before the clock, back in the old day, you would say, I'm having a banquet on this day, but you wouldn't say what time, because you wouldn't know. And it was on the day, you would say, oh, my banquet's at this time. So on the day, a lot of people who had said, oh yeah, we'll come, must have cancelled at the very last minute and been like, actually not able to make it now. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee have me excuse. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee have me excused. Someone's bought land, someone has cattle. These are materialistic things. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. And it's interesting there that he's put his family above God. And of course your family is important. And of course you should. Because my only thing right now is, why didn't he say his wife should come to the banquet with him? Because you can bring your family and spend time with God. You should never use your family as reason to say, oh, I can't spend time with God, because you can spend time with God while you spend time with your family. And God is most likely the reason how you have your family. So it's that whole principle of loving the gift more than the gift giver, right? God is the one who blessed your marriage with your wife, yet you prioritize your wife over spending time with God. But anyway, this is metaphorical, so let's keep reading. So that servant came and showed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and the maimed, and the halt, and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou commanded, and yet there is room. And the Lord said unto the servant, go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. And I love this. It's almost like God tried with the people and they were like, no. Then he said, okay, we're going to allow everyone. And that's where people like you and I come in, who are not of direct Jewish lineage, because people like you and I are Gentiles, right? We should not be allowed to have salvation. But God extended his love, and he extended his mercy, and he extended his grace to the rest of humanity, where now everyone, no matter what, can now receive the gifts that he has for us, which is eternal life, which is going to heaven, which is spending forever with God. And there went great multitudes with him, and he turned and said unto them, if any man come to me, and hate not his father and his mother, and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And that's quite an extreme thing to say. The word hate here is not used for literal hate, but is used to contrast with the love that we should have for God. And I've written, our allegiance to God is higher rank than any other relationship. And it's a hard thing to accept, but you can't love the gift more than the gift giver. You can't value things over God, because the only reason you have anything is because of God. And it's a difficult principle to wrap your head around, but ultimately it comes from humility and accepting and understanding that you have been saved through grace. Grace means you didn't do anything to deserve it, but God gave it to you anyway. And whosoever doth not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counted the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest haply, after he hath laid the foundation, and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king goeth out to make war against another king, sitteth not down first, and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is yet a great way off, he sendeth an ambassage, and desireth conditions of peace. So Jesus is pointing out very logical things, right? He likens it to someone trying to build, but they don't calculate how much money they have to see if they have enough money to build. Jesus just wants to make sure that the people who are standing by him during this day and age, and also us right now in our time, he wants to make sure that the people who are living their lives for him, the people who are speaking of his name, the people who are claiming to be Christian, are actually committed and dedicated to it. Right? He wants to make sure we're in it with him. And I've written, you can come as you are, but you can't stay as you are, right? Christianity is for everyone. God's love is for everyone. He wants everyone to receive the love that he is so willingly giving. But once you come into God's love, you have to allow yourself to now mirror what you're receiving. If you're receiving the love of God, if you're receiving all of the things which he's given you, then that should reflect in your character and in how you are as a person. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not all he hath, he cannot be my disciple. And the principle of giving up everything you have, obviously in that day the disciples would have had to do that literally. They literally dropped everything they had to follow Jesus. And right now, we do still have to do that, but not in the same regard. As in, Jesus and God is not expecting you to literally move out from your house and go preaching in the streets, because A, that wouldn't be effective in today's day and age, and B, it's not practical, right? We read earlier that God is a God of logic. But what we do have to do is make sure that we don't value anything in our lives above God. Salt is good, but if the salt have lost its savour, wherewith shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land, nor yet for the dunghill, but men cast it out. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. And I've written, a Christian cannot be useful without being like Christ. It's that same principle, right? You're a Christian, Christ is in the name. So if you are a Christian, you have to be like Jesus Christ. You have to show his love. You have to preach his gospel. When I say preach his gospel, I don't literally mean stand on the streets and start shouting. If you want to do that, that's amazing. But there are other ways in which you can share your light with the world. Something like being kind, right? Going out of your way to make someone's day. That's sharing the love that God has shown you onto other people. It can be small little steps that you do to be more like Jesus, having compassion, being a good listener, being a good friend. These are small ways that we can try and integrate into our everyday life, that same love that God showed for us. Then one day someone might say to you, wow, you're so full of love, you're so happy, you're so kind. And you can be like, yes, because of Jesus. And that can be how you can introduce Jesus to somebody, and you can be an example to them of what it means to have a relationship with God. If we're Christians, but we don't have anything about our lives that represents God, then what use of it? So that's where we wrap up for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow with chapter 15.